Welcome. In this short video, we'll review the roles of the Housing Chief, Building Protection Team Leader, and Resident Engagement Team Leader, how they work together, and the tools to help your organization be ready to respond. First, let's review the staffing chart, its overall structure, and the way these three roles fit into it. The chain of command is headed by the Incident Commander. The Housing section is led by the Housing Chief, who oversees the Building Protection and Resident Engagement Team Leaders. These team leaders work together and report to the Housing Chief during section meetings and throughout a disaster. The Housing Chief also works with the Incident Commander and other chiefs to collect and share vital information. The Housing section makes sure buildings are protected and residents are informed about how to prepare for and respond to a disaster. The Ready to Respond Toolkit provides specific job action packets for each role, including a job description, job action sheet, and tools tailored to each role. Job descriptions detail the primary responsibilities of each role. Job action sheets include specific tasks to be completed over 8 operational periods, before, during, and after a disaster. Created in Microsoft Word, these can be easily adapted to your organization's needs. Tools include guides, worksheets, and checklists to help successfully complete each role. Now, let's look at the 3 roles and the resources to support them. The Housing Chief directs the Building Protection Team Leader and Resident Engagement Team Leader to focus on disaster preparedness, response, and recovery at each property which the organization owns or manages. Before a disaster, the Housing Chief should consider all the buildings in the organization's portfolio, deciding which are vulnerable to disaster and which house residents with special needs. The Housing Chief must also decide in advance how best to track information which will be supplied by team leaders throughout a disaster. When a disaster hits, the Housing Chief advises on the need to evacuate, shut down, and reopen buildings, oversees damage assessments, holds meetings with team leaders, and reports vital information to the Incident Commander. The Housing Chief has a job action packet which includes a job description and job action sheet. There are no other tools for this role. The Building Protection Team Leader takes all actions necessary to protect the infrastructure, including electrical, mechanical, water, steam, gas, and elevator systems of an assigned building. Before a disaster, the Building Protection Team Leader reviews relationships with building vendors and studies the vulnerabilities of their buildings, critical equipment, and systems to a disaster. When a disaster hits, the Building Protection Team Leader shuts down a building under tight deadlines, anticipates the need for additional resources and requests them in a timely manner, and works closely with the Resident Engagement Team Leader. In addition to the job description and job action sheet, tools to support the Building Protection Team Leader's role include the Building Readiness Report, which organizes key information about a building including critical systems, its residential and commercial use, and its evacuation zone. The Building Shutdown and Reopen checklist spells out tasks to complete when shutting down and reopening a building. The Building Equipment Inventory worksheet tracks critical building equipment. It should be updated regularly and can be used to quickly order or repair equipment damaged by a disaster. The Building Emergency Kit guide and worksheet provide information about assembling and maintaining a building's emergency kit, including a list of vital supplies for emergency response. And the Critical Vendor Contact List includes contact information for emergency contractors and agencies that support a building's disaster response and recovery. The list should be updated regularly and posted in a location accessible to all building staff. The Resident Engagement Team Leader takes all actions necessary to communicate with residents in an assigned building and to optimize their disaster preparedness. Before a disaster, the Resident Engagement Team Leader gathers contact information and identifies the special needs of residents and potential resident leaders. When a disaster hits, the Resident Engagement Team Leader communicates emergency updates to all residents, assists them in evacuation, identifies residents most likely to need help after the disaster, and works closely with the Building Protection Team Leader. In addition to the job description and job action sheet, tools to support the Resident Engagement Team Leader's role include the Resident Flyer Guide, which details how to produce flyers to update residents and provide disaster preparedness information. The Resident Services Contact List gathers contact information on emergency contractors and agencies, which can support residents' recovery after the disaster. The Evacuation Tracking Sheet records information on resident evacuation, including sign-in and sign-out days and times, and destinations of residents when an evacuation is ordered. The Resident Survey gathers critical contact and special needs information and communicates preferences so your organization can best reach and support residents. The survey should be given to residents to complete well in advance. The Floor Captain Guide describes floor captains, who they are, and how they can help support residents in disaster preparedness and response. The Your Go Bag checklist reminds residents of things they will need if buildings are evacuated. The checklist should be given to residents well in advance so they can prepare their go bags. Thank you for watching. Now you're one step closer to being ready to respond.